My name is Lauren Hale, and I live in Chicago, Illinois. To everyone who knows me, I'm the struggling daughter who rents a small apartment with fading paint, eats budget takeout, and works too hard for too little. My parents, Diane and Victor Hale, have always believed that I never quite made it. They see me as the one who couldn't keep up with their elite circle, the one who clings to modesty because she can't afford luxury. I let them believe every bit of it, because it keeps me protected. What they don't know is that I am the founder and sole owner of Hale Meridian Holdings, a private empire quietly worth $170 million. The company owns boutique hotels in Boston, wellness studios in Seattle, 2 logistics hubs in Chicago, and a minority stake in a payment startup in San Diego. The assets are all underlayered subsidiaries. My name never appears publicly. Only initials, only silence. My wealth began as an accident of frustration. At 24, I was working in a marketing firm, making $68,000 a year and saving everything I could. I lived in a studio that smelled of coffee and ambition. My parents laughed when I told them I wanted to start a business. My father told me, "You should marry well instead of dreaming about running something." My mother said, "Be practical, Lauren. You're not built for risk." So, I stopped talking about my plans and started building them. When I was 26, I bought a failing yoga studio on the north side for $112,000, every cent I had. The lease was a nightmare, the walls were cracked, and the last owner left unpaid bills everywhere. I worked 14-hour days, taught classes myself, and slept on a cot in the back room. Within 2 years, I had 3 profitable locations. By 29, I sold the chain to a national franchise for $3.7 million. That money became my seed capital for Hale Meridian. I reinvested everything, moving fast and quietly. I learned about property flipping, commercial financing, and digital branding. Within 5 years, I was sitting on $45 million in net assets. I didn't buy luxury cars or show off. I wore Target jeans and used the same old laptop. When people think you're broke, they stop watching your moves. That was my advantage. My parents never noticed. They were too busy chasing reputation. My father had retired early from banking with just enough savings to attend charity galas and pretend he was still important. My mother chaired social clubs in Lake Forest, where gossip counted as currency. They loved their reflection in other people's admiration. When I finally bought my first high-end property, a $3.8 million brownstone in Boston's Beacon Hill, I didn't even tell them. It became my escape house, a place where no one knew who I was. Later came the $6.2 million glass penthouse in Seattle overlooking Elliott Bay. From there, I could watch the water turn from blue to silver under the sunset. I also purchased a Cedar Lake house in Michigan for $1.5 million, a peaceful retreat. The deed, framed and signed in my own name, sits inside a safe in my Chicago apartment, next to the founding documents of Hale Meridian Holdings. That safe represents my freedom, the one thing my parents could never control. Then came the dinner that changed everything. My parents had invited themselves to an exclusive private club downtown. I had gone there to meet Marcus Reed, my CFO, and Evelyn Harper, our legal counsel. We were finalizing terms for a new Boston acquisition, a hotel valued at $28 million. The club's interior glowed with amber light, the kind that flatters arrogance. My parents arrived dressed like royalty, greeting other members with exaggerated warmth. They joined our table without asking, smiling as if they were the reason the room existed. "Lauren's still trying to find her path," my mother asked Marcus with a syrupy tone. "She's always been creative with her dreams." Marcus kept his composure. He knew the truth but followed my lead in silence. My father chuckled and said, "She's not part of our elite class yet, but she tries hard. We admire that." Their words stung more than I wanted to admit. I had worked for years, so I'd never depend on their approval, yet in that moment, surrounded by people who respected me for the image they didn't even know was mine, I felt the old ache of being dismissed. I could have smiled and left, but I was done letting them rewrite my story. I took out my phone and sent one text to Evelyn upstairs. "Boardroom ready?" Her reply came seconds later. Everything's set. I looked at my parents. Come upstairs with me. There's something I want you to see. They exchanged amused looks, whispering that I must be showing them my new little office. They followed me to the elevator. I tapped my security card, and the system recognized my fingerprint. My mother frowned slightly. You work here? I own here, I said quietly. When the elevator opened on the 53rd floor, they stepped into a wide corridor lined with abstract art. The wall plaque read Hale Meridian Holdings, executive level. Through the glass doors, my staff rose from their seats. Marcus stood at the end of the boardroom table, his posture formal. Evelyn greeted them with professional courtesy. My mother's hand tightened around her clutch. My father looked around, confusion knitting his brow. Whose company is this? He asked. Mine, I wanted to say, but I let Marcus answer. He gestured toward me. This is Ms. Hale's firm. She's our founder and chief executive officer. The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut the air. My parents stared at me as if they'd walked into the wrong world. My mother's face went pale, her voice trembling. You can't be serious. Lauren, this can't be true. I stepped closer, calm and steady. It's very true. The company's valuation last quarter was $170 million. Every building you've seen in this skyline tonight, from our logistics yard to the Meridian Suites Hotel, is part of what I built while you were telling people I was a failure. My father's jaw tightened. Why didn't you tell us? Because you would have turned it into a competition. You would have claimed credit, and I wanted peace. They stood frozen, pride draining from their faces. For years, they had measured me by their shallow standards, money, status, appearances. Now the truth stood before them in glass and light. In that moment, I realized I didn't need their approval, their validation, or their praise. I already had what mattered. My own name, my own success, and a power they could never touch. That night, the masks came off. They saw who I really was, and I finally saw who they had always been. The boardroom felt like another world compared to the glowing noise of the restaurant downstairs. Through the floor-to-ceiling glass, Chicago shimmered in amber and steel, the river slicing through the city like a ribbon of light. My parents followed me in, their expressions fixed somewhere between curiosity and disbelief. To them, this floor must have looked like forbidden ground, too polished, too professional, too far above anything they imagined I could belong to. Marcus Reed, my CFO, was already standing at the head of the table with a thick binder in hand. Evelyn Harper, our legal counsel, stood beside him, composed as always. The rest of my executive team had taken their seats, their faces quiet but alert. They all knew what was about to happen. I gestured toward the long glass table. Please have a seat. My mother laughed softly. Whose office is this, Lauren? You clean here now. Her tone was sugar-coated but sharp enough to sting. My father didn't laugh. He just scanned the room, eyes narrowing at the logo etched into the glass wall. Hale Meridian Holdings. The name didn't register at first. It was too foreign to his idea of me. Evelyn slid 2 crisp packets across the table. Annual summary, fiscal year. Owner, chair, and chief executive, Lauren R. Hale. My parents froze. My father picked up the document, read the first line, then stared at me like he was seeing a ghost. You can't be serious, he muttered. I'm entirely serious, I said calmly. This company, everything on this floor, is mine. I built it from scratch. We operate across Chicago, Boston, Seattle, and San Diego. 420 employees. Our net assets exceed $170 million. I nodded toward Marcus, who tapped a key on the laptop. A slide lit up on the glass screen behind him, financial charts rising in perfect rhythm. Our current cash position is $38.4 million, he said. Projected annual growth, 17%. Debt ratio, less than 6%. Hale Meridian is positioned for expansion across 3 sectors. The silence in the room was absolute. The numbers spoke for themselves. I didn't enjoy watching my parents' faces crumble, but I couldn't deny the satisfaction either. It wasn't revenge. It was truth long overdue. I had spent my life shrinking to fit their comfort, wearing humility like armor. But tonight, I stood as myself, unmasked. My mother blinked hard, clutching her purse. Lauren, this is a joke, isn't it? This can't be real. You never told us. Because you never asked, I said. You were too busy reminding me that I didn't belong. When I told you I was working on something big, you laughed. When I got my first loan, you told your friends I was being reckless. So I stopped telling you anything. My father's face was turning red. He looked down at the termination papers Evelyn had placed in front of him, then back up at me. What is this supposed to mean? It means you're out, I said plainly. Both of you. You've been using this company's name for social leverage, attending events, introducing yourselves as executive partners of Hale Meridian. That ends tonight. My mother's eyes widened. You're firing us? Your parents. I folded my hands. I'm not firing my parents. I'm dismissing two people who violated company ethics and embarrassed my staff. The fact that you happen to be my parents doesn't change the policy. The words seemed to hang in the air, echoing against the glass walls. Victor slammed the packet shut. You've lost your mind. You think a little success makes you one of us? You'll never be part of our world. I stood, looking at him steadily. Then I guess your world just got smaller. He started to speak again, but Evelyn interjected smoothly. Security is on standby, Ms. Hale. My mother's lips trembled. You can't do this to us, Lauren. I met her gaze. You did this to yourselves. I spent years trying to make you proud. You spent years reminding me I wasn't enough. Now you're standing in my boardroom, pretending not to understand the math. Diane rose from her chair, clutching her pearls as if they might hold her together. My father muttered under his breath about disrespect and ungrateful children. But I could see what really haunted him, the sudden awareness that the daughter he dismissed was now the one with the power to dismiss him. Marcus stood by the door, a silent witness to the collapse of an illusion. Evelyn remained professional, handing them the signed termination letters. My parents left without another word. When the door closed, the air in the room felt lighter, though my chest still ached. Marcus watched me carefully. You okay? I'm fine, I said, even though the words felt heavier than I wanted them to. Let's process the bonuses for Q4. Everyone deserves a little extra tonight. He smiled faintly. You sure? I nodded. Send a wire, $250,000 across the management pool. They've earned it. He didn't question me. Marcus never did. That's why I trusted him. When the room emptied, I stood alone, staring out at the skyline. The glass reflected my face at me, calm, composed, almost unfamiliar. Down below, the city moved like nothing had changed. Cars traced red lines over bridges. The river gleamed under the streetlights. But for me, everything had shifted. I rode the elevator down in silence. My reflection in the brass panels looked both older and freer. I thought of all the nights I'd worked late, the endless phone calls, the years of swallowing my pride. It had led to this moment, the quiet triumph of truth over pretense. Outside, the air was cold. I walked the few blocks to my apartment, hands in my coat pockets, the city buzzing around me. My phone vibrated with messages from Marcus confirming the wire transfers. I smiled. I could afford to be generous. I had built something real, and I wasn't afraid to share it with those who'd earned their place beside me. When I reached my building, the doorman greeted me kindly. Late night again, Ms. Hale? Something like that, I said, smiling. Upstairs, I poured a glass of wine and sat by the window. The skyline stretched endlessly, Chicago in all its glass and grit, a reminder that power is built in silence long before it's ever shown. My parents had spent their lives chasing approval. I had spent mine building a legacy. Tonight, I didn't feel angry or even proud. I felt resolved. For years, they thought I was beneath them. Now they had to face a truth no money or social title could erase. Their daughter was the empire they always wanted to belong to. 2 weeks passed before my parents reached out. The message came through Marcus, not directly to me, an email politely asking if I would meet them in Boston to talk. I read it twice before answering. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the tiny, stubborn part of me that still wanted to believe they could change. So I said yes. We met in a lounge of the Harperton Grand, a hotel I owned under one of Hale Meridian's shell entities.
They didn't know that.
To them, it was just another luxury property they could brag about visiting. The irony wasn't lost on me. They arrived 15 minutes early. My mother wore pearls and her favorite beige coat, her hair styled just as it had been during my childhood, perfect, controlled, expensive. My father looked older than I remembered, his tailored jacket failing to hide the stiffness in his shoulders. They smiled too much, the way people do when they need something. "Lauren," my mother began, touching my hand gently. "We've been thinking about that night. We said things we shouldn't have. We were surprised. Surprised that I had built an empire while they spent years pretending I was a failure." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. My father cleared his throat. "We realize now we may have treated you unfairly. You've done something incredible. We're proud of you." The word proud sounded foreign in his mouth. I wanted to believe him, and for a moment I almost did. They seemed sincere, their voices softer, their eyes damp. I told myself people could change. I told myself forgiveness wasn't weakness. "I don't want enemies in the family," I said finally. "If we're going to try again, it has to be with honesty." They nodded quickly, relief flashing across their faces. That was when the idea came to me, a bridge they could either cross or burn. "I'll bring you both into the company," I said. "Real positions, real pay, but clear rules. No games, no manipulation, no secrets. If you cross a line, you're done." My mother's eyes widened with surprise. "You'd really do that for us?" "I would," I said, "because I still believe in giving people chances." 2 days later, the contracts were signed. I appointed Diane as hospitality ambassador for our Seattle and San Diego hotels, salary $210,000 plus a $50,000 housing allowance if she relocated. Victor became director of community partnerships across Chicago and Boston, same salary, plus a discretionary travel budget. Evelyn drafted airtight terms, including conflict of interest clauses and quarterly ethics reviews. I thought I was being wise. Looking back, I was hopeful. At first, things went surprisingly well. Diane charmed guests in Seattle, sending cheerful reports filled with praise from staff. She learned names, memorized birthdays, and spoke at charity brunches like a seasoned professional. Victor handled community programs, after-school grants, urban renewal projects, and received glowing feedback. For the first time in years, I let myself breathe. Maybe this could work. I started to imagine family holidays without tension. Maybe I'd invite them to the lake house in Michigan that summer. I even thought of transferring a small property to their names, just a token of peace. But peace, I would learn, only lasts as long as the people in it allow it to. It began quietly, a few irregularities flagged by Marcus during our monthly audit. "Small stuff," he said at first. "Probably mix-ups. But small things add up." A $27,000 antique mantel clock billed to a hospitality account. A pair of diamond earrings from a boutique in San Diego. 2 first-class tickets to Miami were purchased during a week Diane was supposedly attending an investor event in Seattle. When Marcus confronted her, she laughed it off. "Oh, that must have been an error. You know how travel systems can be." I wanted to believe it. But the following week, Evelyn brought something worse, a leaked proposal for our Boston expansion. The plans had landed in the hands of Gregory Shaw, a rival developer who had tried to buy our hotel chain the year before. He was charming, ruthless, and known for exploiting inside information. Evelyn said only 4 people had access to that file: Marcus, herself, me, and my parents. My stomach dropped. We launched a quiet internal audit. Nolan Brooks, our cybersecurity director, began pulling access logs and reviewing camera feeds. Each day, new fragments appeared: odd travel reimbursements, late-night file downloads, and unusual network activity from my father's laptop. Sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford. I'd sit by the window in my Beacon Hill brownstone, watching the fog roll off the Charles River as the city woke below. My phone would buzz with updates from Evelyn. each message a small fracture in whatever was left of my trust. The breaking point came on a Tuesday morning. Marcus sent a single video file captured by one of our partner restaurant's security cameras in Back Bay. The footage showed my father seated in a private room with Gregory Shaw. In the final seconds, Victor slid a folder across the table. The document watermark was visible. Hail Meridian Holdings, Expansion Strategy 2027. I didn't need audio to know what was happening. The next day, Diane attempted to transfer $320,000 from a project account to a newly opened shell company. The name on the paperwork? DM Consulting, her initials, right there in bold. She hadn't even bothered to hide it well. She didn't know I had personally set a manual approval limit of $25,000 on all project accounts. Marcus caught it before it cleared. That afternoon, I sat in my Chicago office staring at the framed photo of my lake house in Michigan. The cedar siding glowed in the picture, the lake perfectly still. I had built that house to represent peace, a life earned, not given. My parents had once promised to visit. Now, they had turned every bridge into ash. I set the photo down, folded my hands, and made a call. Evelyn, I said quietly, prepare termination letters for both. No severance, no bonuses. Document everything. Understood, she replied, her voice steady. Should I notify security? Yes, I said. This time, don't let them talk their way out. When I hung up, I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I just sat there, listening to the faint hum of the city outside my window. Success had taught me to build walls high and strong, but family had taught me something colder, that sometimes the people you save are the ones who will still choose to betray you. The kindness I had offered them was genuine. Their deceit was deliberate. And soon, I would show them what it meant to lose everything twice. The second dismissals were swift and silent. Evelyn read the letters aloud, her voice steady and factual, while Marcus stood beside her collecting the company badges. My parents sat across from us, their faces carved in disbelief. Nolan, our systems director, was already disabling their accounts as Evelyn spoke. I had chosen efficiency over emotion. I had to. Diane was the first to break. Lauren, please. We're your parents. You can't just erase us like this. I kept my gaze steady. You erased my trust, not me. This is business. And business runs on integrity. Victor leaned forward, his voice rising. You'll regret this when you're alone. Family is all you have. I looked at him, calm but distant. Family is earned, not owed. Their contracts had included corporate housing, Diane in a Seattle condo, Victor in a Boston apartment. Once the contracts were terminated, so were the leases. We offered 72 hours to vacate, along with an optional settlement, 3 months' pay if they signed a non-disclosure and stayed away from our properties. They refused. Pride is a heavy currency. 3 days later, the concierge at our Boston hotel called to report that my parents were trying to sleep in their car, parked across the street from the entrance. They were charging their phones in the lobby, hoping to slip past security. I told the staff to offer bottled water and blankets, but not a room. Be kind, I said, but hold the line. Some might call that cruelty. I call it a consequence. Kindness without boundaries is weakness dressed as virtue. I took a few days off after that, my first real break in months. I drove alone to my lake house in Michigan, the one with cedar walls and wide windows that opened toward the water. The air there always smells like pine and rain, sharp enough to clear your thoughts. I made coffee, walked barefoot across the deck, and sat with a stack of documents from the foundation team. The top file was a proposal to create scholarships for first-generation college students in Chicago and Boston. I signed the commitment that morning, $5 million over 5 years, and wired the first $1 million on the spot. The confirmation email arrived moments later, and for the first time in weeks, my chest loosened. Some tears aren't born of sadness. They're proof that you survived. The lake was still that afternoon, reflecting the blue of the sky so clearly that it looked like glass. I stood on the dock with a journal in hand, the same one I used to draft my earliest business plans. On the first page, I wrote a single sentence. You did not fail them. You simply refused to be taken. That night, I lit a small fire in the stone pit by the water and burned the last of their contracts. The pages curled and blackened, the ink dissolving into sparks. Watching them turn to ash felt like closing a door I should have shut long ago. By the next morning, the haze in my mind had lifted. I opened my laptop and reviewed projects waiting for approval. The new San Diego hotel, a $42 million venture, and the acquisition of a last-mile logistics yard outside Seattle for $11.4 million. I authorized both. Growth was the best kind of revenge. When I drove back to Chicago on Sunday, the city felt steadier, cleaner, like the noise had quieted inside me. My apartment greeted me with familiar warmth, the old radiator hissing, the faint scent of cedar oil from the diffuser on the shelf. I framed 2 photographs for the wall, one of the lake house at sunset and one from the Seattle penthouse balcony, where the water shimmers like a sheet of polished metal. They reminded me that peace, once earned, must be protected. Monday morning, I walked to the office as the sun rose between the towers. Commuters hurried by, none of them knowing or caring who I was. I liked it that way. My name didn't need to be recognized in public. It was printed on deeds, contracts, and balance sheets, the quiet signatures that built an empire. Inside, my employees were already at work. The hum of printers and distant chatter felt grounding. People smiled when they saw me, not because of who my family was, but because they trusted the company we had built together. I spent the morning reviewing operations reports, then joined a site call for our Boston property. The conversation was smooth, efficient, and professional, everything my home life had never been. That afternoon, Evelyn stepped into my office. "Your parents have reached out again," she said carefully. "They're asking for a meeting." I didn't look up from my notes. "Tell them I wish them well. That's all." She hesitated. "You sure?" "Yes," I said quietly. "I gave them 2 chances. I won't offer a third." After she left, I sat back in my chair, looking out at the city. The skyline glittered through the glass, bold and alive. Chicago had always been a hard city, but it rewards endurance. I thought about all the versions of myself that had existed here: the waitress working late shifts, the woman counting pennies to make rent, the entrepreneur holding her first loan agreement in shaking hands. Every struggle had led to this, a life on her own terms. My parents still call sometimes. I let the phone ring until it stops. I don't hate them anymore. I simply feel nothing. Their voices are echoes from another life, one I've already buried. They chose pride over truth, comfort over accountability, and when the consequences arrived, they blamed me for enforcing them. But forgiveness doesn't mean reopening the door. Sometimes I think of what my father said that night. "You'll regret this when you're alone." He was wrong. I've never felt more whole. My solitude isn't loneliness, it's peace earned through honesty. As evening fell, I walked along the Chicago River, the city lights stretching across the water like gold threads. I passed strangers laughing, couples walking hand in hand, and for once, I didn't feel like an outsider. I felt like someone who had built her place in the world with her own hands. When I returned home, I opened my ledger one last time before bed. The numbers were strong. The company was thriving. The empire was stable. $170 million. That figure used to feel like validation. Now it just feels like freedom, quiet, steady, and entirely my own. My parents once told me I wasn't part of their elite class. They were right, just not in the way they meant. My class is made of builders, not beggars. My class believes in contracts, not guilt. My class pays its debts, keeps its promises, and sleeps soundly at night. And as I closed my notebook, the city whispering through my window, I realized the truth I had been chasing all along. My wealth isn't the empire I built. It's the peace I refuse to lose.